All right, so are you ready to dive into some South African drama?
Always up for a bit of intrigue, especially when it involves government departments and technology. What do we got?
Well, you know how everyone's always talking about digital transformation.
It's the buzzword on everyone's lips.
Well, this deep dive takes us right into the middle of it. We're tackling South Africa's Home Affairs Department, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride. We've got a new minister who's all about hitting the refresh button, a CEO who's calling him out online, and a system so surprisingly reliable it's got banks taking notes.
Sounds juicy. Where do we even begin?
Well, we've got a ton of sources to unpack here, parliamentary records, media interviews, even a fiery LinkedIn post. Buckle up.
I'm intrigued. Let's get into it.
So first things first, let's talk about Dr. Leon Schreiber. He's the new Minister of Home Affairs, and he's making quite the entrance.
New broom sweeps clean, as they say.
That's exactly it. He's wasted no time claiming that their current IT system is basically ancient history. Like we're talking about floppy disks and dial-up internet here.
Bold move. But is it justified?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's where our friend Willy Seyama comes in. He's a CEO, and he did not hold back in his LinkedIn open letter to the minister.
Oh, I heard about this. He basically called the minister out publicly, right?
You could say that. Seyama's argument is basically, hold your horses, minister. You haven't even warmed your seat yet, and you're already calling for a complete overhaul.
I mean, I can see where he's coming from. Sometimes those old systems have a surprising amount of life left in them. And let's not forget the cost and disruption of replacing something so fundamental.
Exactly. And, Seyama even called it the sandcastle phenomenon.
The what now?
The sandcastle phenomenon. He says it's like every new politician wants to build their own legacy, even if it means destroying perfectly good sandcastles along the way.
I like that analogy, and it's a good point to keep in mind. Just because something is new and shiny doesn't always mean it's better.
Especially when you're talking about a system as important as a national identification system.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're on the same page here. When we're talking about digital transformation in this context, what exactly does that look like for a government department?
It's a great question because it can mean different things to different people. Essentially, we're talking about a massive shift from paper to digital. Imagine a world where you can apply for everything online, your records are stored securely in the cloud, and the whole citizen experience is just faster and more efficient.
Sounds like a dream. Sign me up. But I'm sure it's not quite as simple as flipping a switch. What are some of the potential roadblocks, especially in the South African context?
Well, for starters, you need to get everyone on board. We're talking about thousands of employees who are used to doing things a certain way. Seyama stressed the importance of change management. It's not just about the technology itself. You need to bring the people along with you.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the importance of oversight and accountability. Even with the best technology in the world, things can go wrong if you don't have the right people and processes in place.
It's like buying a fancy new sports car and then handing the keys to someone who's never driven before. Recipe for disaster.
Exactly. And unfortunately, South Africa has had its fair share of challenges with these types of large-scale government IT projects in the past.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe Minister Schreiber is so gung-ho about scrapping the old system that he's overlooking some potential pitfalls. I mean, the current system, HANIS, has been around for a while, but it's not exactly a dinosaur.
HANIS, that's the Home Affairs National Identification System, right?
The one and only. And get this, it actually uses biometrics.
Wait, really? I thought Minister Schreiber said it was outdated. Biometrics. Like fingerprint scanning?
Got it. Not exactly what springs to mind when you hear the word outdated, is it?
So not only is it not as antiquated as Minister Schreiber is making it out to be, it's actually quite advanced.
Exactly. And here's the real kicker. Major South African banks are hooked into HANIS.
Yeah, hold on a minute. Banks, as in the institutions that handle our money.
The very same. They're using this supposedly ancient system to verify the identities of new customers.
Wow. You'd think if there were any serious security concerns, the banks would be the first to jump ship.
Right. We're talking about institutions that are all about managing risk. And it's not just a handful of small banks either. Capitec Bank, the biggest one in the country with over 20 million customers, relies on HANIS.
Okay, so that's a pretty big endorsement right there. And what about other industries?
Well, get this. The entire South African insurance industry uses HANIS as a core part of its verification system.
No way, seriously.
Hundreds of billions of rands worth of policies are being underwritten with the help of this supposedly outdated technology. I mean, that's wild, isn't it?
It really makes you wonder what Minister Schreiber knows that we don't.
And then we've got Professor Keith Breckenridge weighing in. He's a leading expert on biometric technology, and let's just say he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Oh, this is getting good. What does he have to say about all this?
Well, he basically says that not only is HANIS stable and functional, it actually has even more untapped potential.
You've got to be kidding me. So we're talking about a system that's not only secure and reliable, but could actually be even better.
That seems to be the consensus among the experts. It's almost like Minister Schreiber is so focused on the new car smell that he's missing the perfectly good vehicle he's already got.
It's a classic case of out with the old, in with the new, without really understanding the value of what's already there.
It kind of makes you wonder if there are other factors at play here, right? Like maybe this big push for a new system is more about politics than practicality.
It wouldn't be the first time. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We still haven't talked about this massive digitization project that Home Affairs has been working on.
Oh, you mean the one where they're digitizing 350 million paper records dating back to the late 1800s?
That's the one. It's a colossal undertaking. I mean, can you imagine the sheer volume of data we're talking about here?
It's mind-boggling. And they've employed thousands of graduates to work on this project. It's been a major initiative for the department.
And a pretty impressive one at that. It shows a real commitment to preserving their history and making those records more accessible.
Totally. But here's the thing. In all of the material you gave me on Minister Schreiber, there's not a single mention of this massive digitization effort.
Wait, really? You're saying the minister who's all about modernizing the department hasn't said a word about this massive digitization project that's already underway?
Not a peep. And yet, his deputy minister seems to be all over it.
That's a bit strange, don't you think? It makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
It does make you wonder. But going back to our friend Willy Seyama, he doesn't just criticize in his open letter. He actually offers a pretty bold challenge to the minister. He calls for a full, independent audit of HANIS before any decisions are made about replacing it.
He's putting his money where his mouth is. I like it.
Right. He's basically saying, show us the evidence that HANIS is as bad as you claim, or back off. It's a classic David versus Goliath scenario. It takes guts to challenge a government minister like that publicly.
For sure. But it's a valid point, right? Shouldn't there be a thorough and impartial assessment before any major decisions are made?
Absolutely. Transparency is key. And imagine if this audit reveals that HANIS, with a few upgrades, could actually outperform the brand new system. That would be quite the plot twist, wouldn't it?
Talk about egg on your face. Minister Schreiber might think twice about throwing around the word outdated so casually.
It really makes you think about the motivations behind all of this. Is it really about efficiency and security, or are there other factors at play here?
It's a question worth asking, especially when you consider the potential costs and disruptions involved in replacing such a fundamental system.
And for our listeners, this story goes beyond the borders of South Africa. It raises a crucial question for all of us. In our pursuit of the next big thing, are we too quick to discard what's already working, even if it's not flashy or new?
It's the age-old dilemma of out with the old, in with the new, versus making the most of what you've got.
And sometimes what we've got is a diamond in the rough. Like HANIS, a system that's been quietly and reliably keeping things running for years, even if it's not making headlines.
It's a good reminder that progress isn't always about reinventing the wheel. Sometimes it's about polishing it up and making it even better.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the South African Home Affairs saga, we're left with a lot to ponder. We've uncovered a debate that's full of twists and turns, from a new minister eager to make his mark to a CEO who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo, and a system that's far more sophisticated and important than it might seem at first glance.
And let's not forget about that massive digitization project that seems to have gotten lost in the shuffle. It makes you wonder what other initiatives are being overlooked in this rush to embrace the new.
It's a good reminder that progress requires more than just good intentions and shiny new technology. It takes careful planning, collaboration, and a willingness to learn from the past. And sometimes it takes a brave voice to remind us that what we're looking for might be right under our noses.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. Thanks for having me on the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep asking the tough questions and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.